Okay, this is my response to the Dev Diary feedback request. So I noticed Montu just dropped a video about this and I thought about making a reaction video to it, but I don't want to risk getting flagged or anything against terms of service. Not that Montu would do that, so I will make a response to the diary questions itself. I have already left a comment on Montu's video, so if you saw that, you will notice those same points here. I will not waste your time reading the wall of text of the diary. If you want, you can read that. I will simply answer the question. So starting with Stellaris, to you, I believe the development as of late has put way too much focus on RP content and not nearly enough into improving the game mechanics and content that matters like Machine Age did. So to really simplify and shorten this, make more Machine Age level content and only do the RP side quest content just enough to keep the people that like it from quitting. So an example of what this could look like, and what I would like to see, a Machine Age level release every 6 months or a year, and a RP event, wall of text, side quest focused DLC every 2 years or so. Right now it seems like you have a Machine Age level event every 3 years, mixed in with 5 meh, yawn, story pack DLC that is priced almost as much as the Machine Age. That leads me to the next thing, price. Paradox, please listen. My viewers have commented over and over about how pricey the DLC is each release. However, I think the big problem that needs to be addressed is you still have releases that are almost 10 years old, priced barely less than they were on release. The subscription feature is not good enough. You really need to either make that DLC permanently dirt cheap or simply add it to the base game as a thank you to your loyal and potential new player base. This would actually net you more money and revenue from the new players that would try Stellaris if they knew they were getting a much bigger game now than the original. The old content is not going to make any more revenue like the new stuff will. Also, you will get mad respect from your player base and it would improve your brand drastically, which from what I have heard, it is on the rocks. Especially after Astral Planes and Cosmic Storms. On that, I think there needs to be more consideration given to what your players want to see versus what you want to see for yourselves. Don't be like the fun pimps from 7 Days to Die that ignored their players and make content and balance changes that they want to see only. Okay, let's talk about what is sacred and what should not be touched. Okay, let me think. I think one of the most perfect systems you guys have is most likely the diplomacy system, though that's a tough call because there is really improvements that could be made to that as well. But overall, it's pretty good. You know, I got screwed by hyperlane placement, sometimes, but I overall have been helped by it way more than hurt. So that is something I think does not need much attention. Oh, I got one. Stop nerfing machine empires. In fact, stop nerfing period. You don't need to nerf anything 99% of the time. Just add more content and make the other aspects more playable rather than making a good feature unplayable. That's all you need to do. I'm going to make a video about this, but overbalance obsession is a game killer, so don't do it please. Look at Overwatch, Helldivers, Space Marine 2, and many more for examples of how nerfs ruin games. Okay, so now to the list of features I have compiled in my head over my various live streams of Stellaris with my community. Here goes. 1. Warfare needs a complete overhaul, specifically the war exhaustion feature. It is not accurate or reliable in indicating with any realism who is winning, and it prevents complete victories way too often. An example of this is getting to the last planet just to run out of war exhaustion and be forced to let the Empire live. This is very frustrating and annoying, and I cannot be alone. Also, there are way too many instances where all the enemy fleets are gone, all planets taken, yet war exhaustion does not even move, or give you positive acceptance for requesting victory. This is unacceptable regardless of what the reasons might be. Also, I have hours of footage that proves that it is very obvious that the computer uses AI fleet tactics and strategies that seem to try to waste as much playtime as possible instead of actually trying to win or get the most favorable outcome for the war. I am not saying that AI needs to be more difficult, but far less annoying in its strategy. For the love of God as well, Hit and run needs to be disposed of or reworked. It is so unrealistic, aggravating, and wastes playtime. If I defeat a fleet, that should be it. I should not have to fight them 6 more times, nor should they be teleporting onto planets I have already conquered. If they don't have a system with a shipyard, then they shouldn't spawn and should be lost. This would place strategic importance on capturing starbases and shipyards like real sci-fi battles. The other solution that needs to be considered is forcing victory on any empire that loses all their planets and starbases. Maybe fleets as well, though that's negotiable. This would simplify and shorten wars. The reason why you don't want long, aggravating wars, where you have to chase the computer around for hours and fight its fleets 6 times, is that it's not fun and it burns players out. So wars need to be as short as possible to avoid this. This is perhaps the #1 reason I have 1200 hours in Stellaris and not 10,000, because I love conquering, but warfare feels like work. It's not fun. So yeah, please change that. The biggest way you could fix war exhaustion is allow players to remove it during war by doing certain things, like winning battles where the KD ratio is really good. What I mean by that is you lost way less ships than they did. You basically whooped their butt. Example, the report says that they lost 6 ships, but you only lost 2 ships. Therefore, you gain back 2% war exhaustion. You occupy one of their biggest planets, so you get 20%, etc. But give players a way to remove their exhaustion if they are absolutely stomping their opponent. It's called morale. If a force has high morale, they will not tire or burn out like a force that is losing. Also, make war exhaustion way more accurate. If I capture a system that should give them more exhaustion, especially highly populated planets, and especially if I annex them during war, i.e. I capture them with Devouring Swarm. Also on Devouring Swarm and other empires that completely remove or are basically in canon and in lore, inspired from real-life sci-fi tropes that don't tire, don't get exhausted, such as the Borg or the Tyranids. A Devouring Swarm or a Driven Assimilator, it really doesn't make sense to have war exhaustion with those empires. So with those kinds of empires that it would apply to, those civics and origins, you need to add war exhaustion immunity to those kinds of empires. So for example, if I'm playing a Determined Exterminator, I don't have to worry about war exhaustion. I'm immune to it. Just an example. So that's something that also needs to be done. It needs to be done. It's very immersion breaking when I'm playing one of those empires, like a Determined Exterminator or a Devouring Swarm, and I get a status quo. That makes no sense to me at all. So yeah. The second biggest change I feel must be made and is long overdue and requested by myself and my community is the espionage and spy network system. This feature is perhaps the most useless and waste of a feature. I am trying to be nice here. First, this system needs to be drastically simplified. The main purpose of spying is to gather intel so that we can see their ships, planets, empire strength, and other critical information, and we need to know this quickly, not in 50 years. If I got a Devouring Swarm next to me I'm spying on, I won't have 50 years to wait to see how strong he is compared to me, what his fleet strength looks like, etc. This information needs to be attained realistically before they decide to jump me. Also, there is way too much silly stuff and things that have nothing to do with intel gain. Those need to get removed. I bet people might like those ideas, but I'm sure they would much rather have a fast intel gain on an empire that might end their run or add to their power than merely disabling a building on a starbase. An example for what this could look like is you have several levels of spy network. First you have systems, then planets, then relative power, then fleets, then ship detail, finally. If you remove an envoy, you gradually lose intel levels, until you reach your general intel level, or you put an envoy back on and it starts up again. The way it is right now, I could go an entire game with a spy network and not even know where their fleets are, much less their weapons detail so I can counterplay, which really should be the true reason for gaining intel. You could even make it an influence dump. The next issue holding this game back, I believe, is habitability. The average empire will only be able to use maybe 20% of the planets they claim, before mid-game or late game. There are way too many uninhabitable planets. The obvious fix for this is to shorten the planet types from 9 to 3 and give them the same values. Example, instead of one wet type being 80%, all 3 types are 80%. In fact, I don't think this is enough. I think only one planet type should be yellow and the others should be different percentages of green. There should be no red except for tomb worlds. Another fix, if not the planet types, at least make buildings that raise habitability that can be spammed. That way we can still use the districts in the beginning and replace the buildings later as we get terraforming. Speaking of terraforming, it needs to cost less for normal planets, be way more likely to pop up in tech choices, and ecological adaptation should be removed. It's repetitive. It is also unrealistic. Terraformers live on planets they terraform in most sci-fi novels. There is also the idea of making species modification for habitability easier to do or have early game. This could also be a fix. Bottom line, we need to be able to use most, not all, but most of the planets we claim. Most people play on small maps, so this is even more important. Just play tall, you say? No. Most players prefer a wide playstyle. Also, ask anyone. It is almost always more fun to conquer the galaxy than ruling it pulling the strings with a tiny empire. Also, unless you are playing a niche build, tall will not be nearly as enjoyable or entertaining as wide. Virtual Ascension may be fun, but I don't want to play it all the time. If I am playing a standard empire, I will usually need at least 10 workable planets to have a good time, before the other empires box me in. All too often I get games where I cannot get more than 3 habitables because the other 10 planets in my territory are all 60% or less. Honestly, I think the most appealing option would be the building solution. This is also the most balanced. This way you get to use the planet, then can use all of it later on as you get more tech. Since you want to free up those building slots, you will still be motivated to explore the other alternatives to raising habitability, such as migration treaties, species modification, and terraforming. The next big issue, and this has been a source of frustration but for many viewers, is the job and pop mechanics in Stellaris. For one, I think it is silly that I cannot simply place my pops on the job I want them to work by clicking and dragging. I don't know the reasons I cannot do this, but there really shouldn't be any good reason I can't, and if no, then that reason needs to be addressed and changed so that I can. The plus-minus button system sucks bad. There needs to be a lot more control here when it comes to being notified when a new pop is being made, and placing that pop where it is most effective. I think that would be the easiest, most straightforward fix. No overhaul or throwing out required. See, complex is not always better, Paradox. One of the reasons StarCraft 2 is such a great strategy game was because they absolutely nailed it on quality of life and UI elements. They also had complexity while keeping things simple at the same time. So I think simplicity is the key word I recommend focusing on going forward. How can we make our systems and features less convoluted and simpler without making it dull or boring? However, I seldom have seen it where something was too simple that it was dull. That usually indicates another problem. Really, Paradox, we could end the video there. You really want to know how to fix your reputation in Stellaris, make money, and bring in new players while retaining loyal ones? Do these things, I am imploring you. You won't be disappointed. However, there are more questions here, so I will get to those too. So most of the sample questions you posted, these solutions will answer. But I did see a question about trade. First off, I think trade should be absolutely last priority compared to the aforementioned issues, so I highly recommend improving that first before you look at trade, which is really not that bad compared to the other issues. I will say, however, that you could make trade more impactful. If anything, give a lot more control over piracy than you do. Wasting fleets to patrol is ridiculous, and I have never done it, nor did I need to. Most games I can completely ignore trade and be fine. As of right now, trade is more of a niche thing that you focus on if you are playing the right empire. Speaking of right empire, I think the number one most positive thing I like about Stellaris is the variety of different empire builds you can play. It has really kept me playing over the years. So I guess with trade, maybe consider making more build possibilities surrounding trade than adjusting current mechanics. As of right now, only options for trade builds are nothing and the 2 Megacorp playstyles. So I would not be opposed to adding more trade-based content. Also, do not for the love of God make colonization harder. After what I said about habitability, I think I made why clear. Colonization is not too easy. If anything, it is too infrequent, difficult, and random. Put it this way, any game I spawn in and I'm only using 3 planets by year 60 is a fail in my book, unless I am doing a challenge. The player needs to be able to find planets they can use fast, especially if they want to optimize their economy later. So interesting question about the Civic and Origins. Honestly though, I think they are fine. I think the issue is not enough relevant or playstyle changing Civics and Origins. So just make more. That they are Civic or Origin does not matter as much. I do not even notice most of the time. If I was able to wave a magic wand and make a feature disappear, it would either be War Exhaustion or the Galactic Community. Though I think War Exhaustion could live with the changes I proposed, I am going to get hate for this, but the Galactic Community either needs to be removed or stop punishing players who join it. It's silly that I can leave the community and get half my economy back that I didn't even know was missing. Make the resolution straight up bonuses or remove the feature entirely. As far as the next DLC you should make, I highly recommend making a DLC focused around genetic ascension, hive mind, and all things biological, just as the Machine Age focused on cybernetic, synthetic, and machine empires. Hive mind is extremely popular with your player base too, and genetic ascension has been neglected for way too long. Every other ascension path has been explored except that one. I think the potential for this idea is huge. The next DLC that you make could be a DLC centered around warfare and playstyles that thrive off being at war constantly. You could even rip off the Cleons. Also, could make a Hunter Empire similar to Predator in Aliens vs. Predator, also known as the Yucha, I think that's how it's pronounced, or the Hirojim from Star Trek Voyager. There are actually some more issues that I feel deserve a mention. One of the changes that really disrupted me recently was the sudden overbalancing done to federations and vassalization. I agree that vassalization was too OP and needed a small adjustment. However, I still feel that the adjustment was a little more than I would have liked. The Federation changes, however, completely baffled me. Since the change Federation spawns have ended a majority of my games, I would be doing well just to run into a Federation fleet that had been building up since game start that was literally 4 to 5 times the size of my largest fleet, even though I outnumbered the rest of their fleet a great deal on a difficulty that was not even that hard. This is unacceptable and very imbalanced. First, I have no idea how that sounded like a good idea to allow that to be possible in the first place. Sudden changes like this are jarring and discourage players. I just can't figure out how allowing the computer AI to have a 100k fleet by year 300 did not sound imbalanced. To be fair, I have not seen this exact issue in a while, so you may have fixed it. If so, good job. However, there are still way too many Federation starts, I feel, in the average game. Another issue is that unlike Advanced and Fallen Empires, I cannot turn off Federation starts. This needs to be an option. Hey guys, real quick, I just wanted to interject in the video here and show you what I'm talking about with Federations. So, we have this small fleet here, okay? This is the average size of this Empire's fleets, okay? None of them are over 20,000, right? My biggest fleet is 30,000, okay? And as you can see, there's a couple empires that are more powerful than me, but not by much, and most of the other empires, I dwarf them or equivalent. Now, you see that fleet. Now look at this fleet right here. And you could tell it's a Federation fleet because it's blue. And it's got this star right here, okay? So, it's got that Federation fleet. 74,000 fleet power. Wow. That's all I wanted to say. Oh, and by the way, it's year 2300. So, yeah. No way I'm going to beat that fleet. Yeah, they have not fixed it. So when it comes to diplomacy, I mentioned that it was fine, but then I thought about trust. I feel this is an underdeveloped mechanic. I think we should be able to do way more with this feature, and it should have way more power than we do. Also, there are way too many times where I cannot join a federation because of low acceptance even though I have max trust and very good relations with each member. This is not acceptable either, and needs adjustment. This discourages me even more from enjoying the changes you have made recently to federations because I cannot even join them easily or at all. Trust could give you acceptance bonuses and even guarantee acceptance if it is maxed out, which it should do. This is only logical. One of the silly factors making the previously mentioned issues even more difficult is distance penalties. These should get removed. Each empire has intergalactic technology, so distance should not mean anything when it comes to relationships and communication. So many times I could have explored new possible alliances and strategies and plot twists in my empire's progression if distance was not a thing. It also is applied way too readily, so at the very least make it much less likely to be applied or reduce the penalty drastically. Speaking of penalties that make the game not fun, the is overlord penalty is very unnecessary and excessive. The reason this is a literal buzzkill is because once they are an overlord, they are unable to be vassalized ever without force. This makes no sense when you are way stronger than their entire block, and they just have one single planet vassal anyway. Changing or removing this penalty completely would prevent players from feeling stuck between power blocks, which nobody wants. The other reason Federation spam is not a good thing. Another issue before I forget is performance. I understand Stellaris is very big in scope, and demands a lot of hardware resources, but I do believe some optimizations to larger maps are in order if it is possible. You could always install settings that make the computer run better on potatoes. Even call it a potato meter. The lower the slider, the better the performance, but the crappier the game looks. Furthermore, Bulwark badly needs a rework. Actually, Bulwark doesn't need a rework, it just needs the taxes removed or drastically reduced. 30% default is ridiculous, this alone makes it not a viable pick. Instead, maybe make the target empire generate less research. What really needs a rework and is in a very sad state right now is defenses in general. Right now, once the game has reached year 300, any fleet can roll up to a starbase 4 times its fleet power and obliterate it without losing any ships, especially once battleships come out. This is sad because so many times I wanted to play a Bulwark like Empire, but scrapped the idea because of the sad state of platforms and starbase power. Even with unyielding, it makes no difference. This leads me to the next issue I feel would breathe fresh air into the game and allow for a lot more playstyles if either removed or balanced: frigates and torpedoes. Because of these things, I cannot do defense or anything but monohull carriers when playing against the computer AI. The first problem with torpedoes is that while it makes sense for them to destroy battleships, they seem to be just as effective against smaller ships like destroyers. Frigates should be a support ship, but the computer spams them like corvettes. Each one can take out a battleship and a large starbase. How does that make sense? I personally feel we went way too overboard with torpedoes. I understand monohulling battleships is boring every game. Yet at the same time, battleships should always be the meta because of their technological and economic cost. You should always win if you have more battleships. However, I do have some solutions. First, you can put a cap on the amount of frigates an empire can have in their fleet, or just remove them and instead replace them with new hull types that are at the same power level as battleships, or different types of battleships. For example, you could officially make a carrier hull, one with better hangar sections than your standard battleship. You could make another hull that has even better artillery sections. You can even have this idea for the other existing hull types as well, especially cruisers. Another thing you could do that would bring much balance to the game in other ways as well is let point defense destroy torpedoes. This would introduce more counterplay, is a simple change developmentally, and make point defense great again, or flak, whatever you choose. But having no counter to torpedoes other than carriers just does not make sense to me. Okay, so I'm going to touch on another thing, PvP. I have heard so many content creators that promote you complain a lot about the state of PvP, and whenever I think about joining that space, their complaints and comments from my viewers stop me. Apparently there's certain optimization issues or whatnot. I am not fully aware of the details because I am not a PvP focused player, but I do know this. Having a bad PvP scene or frustrating PvP scene in any game that features it is a very bad thing. Even if you don't like PvP, there are so many players that do. Also, I have enjoyed watching PvP matches in the past on YouTube, so I would definitely recommend dedicating someone to fixing PvP to the point where people are giving positive feedback about it. I know some of your most well-known creators are very big on multiplayer content, so making multiplayer smooth should be a priority, even have its own dedicated personnel. However, please, just whatever you do, don't try to turn Stellaris into an esport. No, just no. Let the players do that under the table if they wish. Another huge topic, the UI. This is another hot one. There are way too many parts of the UI to go over at once, so I will just name my biggest request here. Please add a UI element that tracks your economic changes from month to month with details as to why they happened. For example, if I lose 15 alloy gain when last month I had 45, I really need to know why that happened. As of right now, there is almost no way to track that. I have to guess. This is further aggravated by the job issue, but we already talked about that. Another issue before I forget is performance. I understand Stellaris is very big in scope and demands a lot of hardware resources, but I do believe some optimizations to larger maps are in order if it is possible. You could always install settings that make the computer run better on potatoes. Even call it a potato meter. The lower the slider, the better the performance, but the crappier the game looks. So the last topic I want to bring up, and man this has been a long video, is the idea of Stellaris 2 or a sequel to Stellaris. If you were asked me about this recently, and I wanted to discuss it here since I think it's relevant to the future of Stellaris. I have one major concern about Stellaris 2. Lately, let's face it, you guys have struggled with your recent sequel releases, such as City Skylines 2. That is sad because I was looking forward to that game, but I didn't pick it up when I saw it had mixed reviews and the controversy surrounding it. This cannot happen with Stellaris. Obviously for my sake, but also the rest of us creators and the community. We love your game you have made here. Despite everything I have just said, Stellaris is a beautiful game. I mean, I actually should thank you. If it wasn't for this game, I may not have this many subscribers. I still think I would have got here eventually, but who knows how soon that would have been. Your game put me on the map, so because of that, you deserve a thank you from me. That is why I want you to know that I made this video to help you guys, especially since you did ask for feedback. So when it comes to Stellaris 2, I recommend that to avoid making a stinker and make all the mods and DLC you came out with over the years irrelevant, just make a Stellaris 2.0 instead, or an upgraded version of the base game, where you take all these ideas I have brought up, address them as you see fit, and additional content that enhances the base game, but is still compatible with the DLC we have and love. I mean, I hope you take some of these suggestions, but I understand if you do not. Some parts of this will be more difficult, but think of it as a super expansion. Same engine, but a much better base game mechanically and quality of life wise. Simple. I want to say one more thing, Paradox. I want to tell you about the story about the goose who laid the golden egg. A goose laid a golden egg. For a time, its owner let it lay eggs and became very wealthy. One day, though, he got greedy and lost sight of the goose's true value. In order to get as much wealth as he could from the goose, he killed it, cut it open, but found no golden eggs. He soon lost all his wealth and became poor after. Don't be another company that does this in today's day and age, Paradox. Break the mold and set an example for other developers and publishers to follow. If you care more about money than pleasing your customers, you will have neither in the long run. So that's it for now. Hope you guys liked that. And Paradox, if you happen to see this video and want to contact me or consult me about this stuff in any way, you can reach me through my Discord DMs. As for my viewers, if you like my stuff, go ahead and like and subscribe if you want to see me in your feed. Comment and let me know what you think. Attend my live streams and join my Discord if you want to hang out with me. Hit the join button if you want to invest in the channel. Super thanks and super chats if you think I deserve it. Regardless, thanks for the view and the time, and I'll see you again.